The notification sound from my phone cut through the quiet of my empty classroom like a digital knife. 37 messages. In the span of 20 minutes. That's never good news for a high school English teacher who just wants to grade essays in peace. I'm Logan Pierce, and at 33, I've learned that silence is usually preferable to whatever chaos my phone might bring, especially when my wife Amber is involved. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The first message was from my colleague Miles. Dude, you need to see this. Now. The second was a link. The 3rd through 37th were variations of, oh my god, and I'm so sorry, and this is insane. I clicked the link with the kind of dread usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences and faculty meetings. What I saw made my stomach drop through the floor of Jefferson High School and straight into the Earth's core. There was my wife, Amber Holt Pierce, sitting in what looked like our living room, holding my leather journal, the one I kept hidden in my desk drawer, the one where I wrote poetry that I'd never shown another human being. Guys, you have to hear this, Amber was saying to her phone camera, her perfectly contoured face lit up with malicious glee. My husband thinks he's like the next Edgar Allan Poe or something. She opened to a page I recognized immediately, my poem about longing, about feeling invisible in my own marriage. Listen to this garbage, she continued, and began reading in a mocking, theatrical voice. In the spaces between your words, I find myself disappearing, molecule by molecule, until I am nothing but the echo of what you never said. The comments were already pouring in, crying, laughing emojis. Cringe alert. Who writes this in 2024? Secondhand embarrassment is real. But it got worse. So much worse. And get this, Amber continued, flipping pages with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never created anything in her life. He has like 50 of these. 50. All about feelings and rain and other super deep stuff. A voice off camera, male, definitely not mine, chimed in. Read the one about the moon, babe. That one's hilarious. Babe. Some guy was calling my wife babe while she humiliated me for the entertainment of strangers. Oh yeah, Benji found this one earlier, Amber giggled, and I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Benji. Her work friend from the social media company where she coordinated content. The guy she'd been texting late at night, claiming it was just work stuff. She read my poem about loneliness under starlight, the one I'd written after she'd ignored me for 3 straight days while planning some influencer's birthday party. Her voice dripped with sarcasm, turning my private thoughts into public mockery. The video had been posted 2 hours ago. It already had 50,000 views. I set my phone down and stared at the stack of essays on my desk. The role of betrayal in Macbeth. How perfectly fitting. My hands were shaking. Not with sadness, I'd moved past that emotion somewhere around the 15th yikes comment. No, this was something else entirely. Something that felt like ice water in my veins and electricity in my fingertips. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the comments. Strangers were dissecting my most private thoughts, turning my vulnerability into memes. Someone had already made a TikTok duet, dramatically reenacting my poem about rain while wearing a fake mustache. But then I noticed something interesting in the analytics. The video wasn't just being mocked, it was being shared, rapidly. And some of the comments, buried beneath the mockery, were different. Actually, this isn't terrible writing. The meter is pretty good, though. Why is his wife doing this? This seems mean. I opened a new browser tab and did something I'd never done before. I Googled myself. Logan Pierce Poet returned exactly 0 results, as expected. But Logan Pierce Cringe Poet was already showing up in search suggestions. My phone buzzed. A text from Amber. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. I looked at the timestamp on her video. Posted at 3:47 p.m. Her text came through at 4:15 p.m., so she'd spent her afternoon violating my privacy and humiliating me online, and now she was lying about working late. Probably to spend more time with Benji, the guy who'd encouraged her to mock my moon poem. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars belonging to teachers pulling overtime and students at after-school activities. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that somewhere in the vast digital landscape, my private thoughts were being turned into entertainment. But as I stood there, something shifted in my mind. Maybe it was the teacher in me, the part that had learned to think strategically about classroom management and difficult students. Maybe it was just 33 years of being underestimated by people who mistook quiet for weak. I pulled out my phone and started taking screenshots. the video, the comments, the sharing metrics, the timestamp, everything. Then I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my lawyer. Subject line: copyright infringement and unauthorized distribution of creative work. Because here's what Amber didn't know about her cringe husband. I'd been teaching intellectual property law in my advanced placement literature class for 3 years. I knew exactly what rights an author has to his unpublished work, and I was about to get a very expensive education in the consequences of viral mockery. The next morning, I woke up to 847 notifications. Amber's side of the bed was cold and undisturbed. Her working late had apparently extended into working all night. How dedicated of her. I made coffee and opened my laptop, preparing for whatever fresh hell awaited me. The video now had 2.3 million views. 2.3 million people had watched my wife betray me for content. But something unexpected had happened overnight. Guys, read the top comment. I looked this up, and this is actually called confessional poetry, and it's like a whole legitimate thing. Robert Lowell, Sylvia Plath. This dude isn't that bad. Someone had created a thread breaking down the technical aspects of my work. Meter, imagery, metaphor. They'd compared my rain poem to early Robert Frost. Another comment. Why is everyone acting like writing poetry is weird? At least he's creating something instead of just reacting to other people's content. And then, buried in the responses, I teach creative writing at Portland State. If this Logan Pierce has more work, I'd love to see it. This shows real promise. I screenshotted that one, too. My phone rang. Miles. Logan, man, I'm so sorry. Jessica showed me the video last night, and we couldn't believe Amber would do that. Yeah, well, believe it. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? I took a sip of coffee and considered the question. Was I okay? My marriage was clearly over, my private thoughts were public entertainment, and my wife was probably in bed with some wannabe influencer named Benji. Actually, Miles, I think I'm better than okay. I think I'm inspired. Inspired? Dude, are you having some kind of breakdown? The opposite, actually. I'm having a breakthrough. Did you know that 2.3 million people have now been exposed to my poetry? Logan? Most writers would eliminate for that kind of audience reach. Sure, the initial response was mockery, but look at this. I read him some of the more thoughtful comments that had emerged overnight. So what are you saying? I'm saying Amber just gave me the best marketing campaign I could never afford. After I hung up, I spent the morning doing something I'd never done before. I compiled my poems into a manuscript. 53 pieces written over the past 5 years. I organized them thematically, wrote a brief introduction, and titled the collection Spaces Between Poems. Then I researched literary agents who specialized in contemporary poetry. My first query letter began. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, you may have seen my work recently. It's been viewed by over 2 million people in the past 48 hours. I sent 12 query letters before lunch. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Logan Pierce? Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh from Creative Artists Agency. I represent literary clients, and I've been following the situation with your poetry online. I'd like to discuss representation. I nearly dropped the phone. The response to your work has been fascinating, she continued. Yes, there's been mockery, but there's also been genuine appreciation from people who understand poetry. The controversy has created a perfect storm of publicity. If we move quickly, we can capitalize on this moment. Capitalize how? Book deal. Poetry collections rarely get this kind of attention. Publishers are already calling me. By 5 p.m., I had 3 agents interested in representing me and a preliminary offer from an independent publisher in Brooklyn. At 6 p.m., Amber finally came home. She walked into the kitchen where I was making dinner, her hair slightly messed, her makeup smudged. She had the decency to look embarrassed. Logan, about yesterday? Which part? I didn't look up from the pasta I was stirring. The part where you violated my privacy, the part where you humiliated me publicly, or the part where some guy named Benji called you babe while you did it? She froze. It wasn't, we were just what, Amber? Just having fun at my expense? Just creating content? Just destroying my trust for views? I didn't think it would blow up like that. It was supposed to be funny. I finally turned to face her. She looked smaller somehow, less confident than the woman in the video who'd mocked my vulnerability with such casual cruelty. Funny for who? For you? For Benji? For the 2 million strangers who've now read my private thoughts? I'm sorry, okay? I'll delete it. Too late. It's been downloaded, shared, and reposted on dozens of platforms. You can't unring this bell. She sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together that morning. where she'd kissed my cheek and told me she loved me before leaving for work. "So, what happens now?" she asked quietly. I served myself a plate of pasta and sat across from her. "Now? Now I'm going to be a published poet." "What?" "3 literary agents want to represent me. I have a publisher interested in my collection. Your little publicity stunt is about to make me money." The color drained from her face. That wasn't supposed to... What, Amber? I wasn't supposed to turn your betrayal into opportunity? I wasn't supposed to be smart enough to copyright my work and find representation? She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, which, in a way, she was. "I've been underestimated my whole life," I continued, twirling pasta around my fork with deliberate calm. "By students who think English teachers are pushovers, by administrators who think I'm too quiet to fight back, and apparently by my own wife, who thought I'd just sit here and take public humiliation without consequences. Logan, you never meant to get caught. You never meant for me to find out about Benji. You never meant for this to backfire. But you absolutely meant to hurt me, Amber. You meant every second of that video." My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Walsh. "Publisher wants to move fast. They're offering $75,000 advance for North American rights. Can you talk tonight?" I showed Amber the text. $75,000, I said. "For the cringe poetry you thought was so worthless." She looked like she might cry. "Good. I should probably thank you," I continued. "Without your betrayal, I never would have had the courage to share my work. Without your cruelty, I never would have discovered that millions of people were hungry for authentic poetry in an artificial world." I stood up and put my plate in the dishwasher. "I'm going upstairs to call my agent. When I come back down, I'd like you to be gone. Logan, please, we can work this out." "No, Amber, we can't. You showed me exactly who you are yesterday, and now I'm going to show you exactly who I am." I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went upstairs to change my life forever. 3 weeks later, Spaces Between Poems was the #1 best-selling poetry collection on Amazon. The advance had grown to $150,000 after a bidding war between publishers. I'd been interviewed by NPR, featured in the New York Times, and invited to read at the 92nd Street Y. The cringe poet had become a brand, but success, I was learning, comes with complications. "Logan, you need to see this." Miles was standing in my classroom doorway, holding his phone with the same expression he'd worn when he'd first shown me Amber's video. "What now?" "Amber's fighting back." He handed me the phone. A new video posted to her Instagram account, which had somehow grown to 500,000 followers in the past month. "Hey everyone," Amber said, looking directly into the camera with practiced sincerity. "I wanted to address the situation with my husband Logan and clear up some misconceptions." She was sitting in what looked like a professional studio, her makeup flawless, her lighting perfect. This wasn't a spontaneous rant. This was calculated. "First, I want to say that I never intended to hurt Logan or violate his privacy. What started as a lighthearted moment between friends got completely out of hand, and I take full responsibility for that." Lighthearted moment. Right. But I also want people to know the full story. Logan has been painting me as this terrible person who destroyed his trust for views, but the truth is more complicated than that. Here it comes. Logan and I have been having problems for over a year. He's become increasingly distant, spending all his time writing instead of working on our marriage. When I found his journal, I was hurt by some of the things he'd written about me, about us. She paused, letting a single tear roll down her cheek. "I'm not excusing what I did, but I'm also not going to let myself be demonized while Logan profits from playing the victim. He's made over $100,000 from this situation while I've received serious threats and lost my job." I looked up at Miles. She lost her job? Keep watching. The man you see in interviews talking about authentic poetry and artistic vulnerability, that's not the Logan I lived with. The Logan I knew was cold, distant, and emotionally unavailable. He poured all his feelings into his writing and left nothing for his actual wife. The comments were already flowing. Team Amber. There are always two sides. Logan seems like a narcissist, TBH. But there were defenders too. This is classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. She violated his privacy and now she's mad he succeeded? Girl, take the L and move on. I handed Miles back his phone. Well, that's interesting. Interesting. Logan, she's trying to destroy your reputation. Is she, though? Or is she just giving me more publicity? I was learning something about the internet. Controversy sells. Every article about Amber's response video mentioned my book. Every debate about who was right or wrong in our marriage drove more people to buy my poetry. My phone rang. Jennifer Walsh. Logan, have you seen your wife's video? Just watched it. How do you want to respond? I looked around my classroom. Students would be arriving in 20 minutes for first period. I had essays to return, lessons to teach, a normal life to maintain in the middle of this digital circus. I don't. You don't want to respond? Jennifer, I'm a poet, not a reality TV star. My work speaks for itself. If Amber wants to turn our divorce into content, that's her choice. I'm going to keep doing what I do, writing, teaching, and staying above the fray. That's very mature of you. It's also strategic. She's emotional, defensive, and desperate. I'm calm, focused, and successful. Which one do you think looks better? After I hung up, I spent the morning teaching Paradise Lost to my AP students. During lunch, I checked my sales numbers. Amber's video had driven another 5,000 book purchases. But the real surprise came after school. I was packing up my classroom when Principal Carter knocked on my door. Logan, can I see you in my office? This couldn't be good. Carter's office smelled like coffee and disappointment, the same as always. But his expression was different than I'd ever seen it. Logan, I'll cut to the chase. The school board met last night. My stomach dropped. Am I being fired? Fired? Logan, you're the most famous teacher in the district, maybe the state. We've had 3 news crews here this week asking to interview you. So, what's the problem? No problem. Opportunity. The board wants to offer you a sabbatical to promote your book and work on your next collection. Full pay, full benefits, 1 year. I stared at him. You're giving me a year off to be a poet? We're investing in our most valuable faculty member. Your success reflects well on Jefferson High. Plus, frankly, the publicity has been incredible for our arts programs. Enrollment in creative writing classes has tripled. I walked out of that meeting with a year of freedom and a salary to support it. At home, I found Amber's things were gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. I'll be staying with friends while we figure out the divorce. I hope you're happy. I looked around our empty house, my empty house now, and realized I was happy. For the first time in years, I was genuinely, completely happy. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down to write. Not about betrayal or loneliness this time, about transformation, about discovering that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw your wife's video. She seems crazy. Your poetry is beautiful. Keep writing. Then another. Team Logan all the way. Your book changed my life. And another. English teacher here. Using your story to teach my students about resilience. Thank you. I turned off my phone and picked up my pen. I had work to do. 2 months into my sabbatical, I was signing books at Powell's in Portland when I saw them. Amber and Benji standing near the back of the bookstore, whispering and pointing. She'd dyed her hair blonde and was wearing sunglasses indoors, the universal disguise of someone who thought they were more famous than they actually were. I was in the middle of signing a copy for a college student who'd driven 3 hours to meet me when I noticed them moving closer. Mr. Pierce, the student was saying, your poem about rain literally saved my life. I was going through a really dark time and... Logan. I looked up. Amber was standing at my table, Benji lurking behind her like a discount bodyguard. Amber. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Benji. The bookstore had gone quiet. People were recognizing the drama, pulling out phones. We need to talk, Amber said. I'm in the middle of an event. This won't take long. The college student looked between us, clearly recognizing Amber from her videos. Should I go? No, I said firmly. Stay. Amber, if you want to talk, you can wait until I'm finished here. But Amber had never been good at waiting. You've destroyed my life, she said loudly enough for the entire store to hear. I can't get a job. I can't go anywhere without people recognizing me, and you just keep getting richer and more famous. I destroyed your life? I set down my pen and looked at her directly. Amber, you posted that video. You chose to mock me publicly. You chose to have an affair. I just chose not to be a victim. You're making money off our marriage. I'm making money off my poetry. Poetry that existed long before you decided to humiliate me. Benji stepped forward. He was taller than me, younger, with the kind of artificially perfect teeth that screamed influencer. You're a manipulative piece of garbage, he said. You've turned everyone against Amber when she was just trying to help you. I stood up slowly. The bookstore was silent now, phones recording from every angle. Help me? I kept my voice calm, but something cold was spreading through my chest. Is that what you call it when you encouraged her to mock my private writing, when you called her babe while she violated my trust? That's not. Or maybe you were helping when you were sleeping with my wife while she was still wearing my ring? Benji's face went red. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Amber, would you like to tell everyone here when your affair with Benji actually started? Because I have phone records, credit card statements, and hotel receipts that paint a pretty clear timeline. This was a bluff. I had some evidence, but not as much as I was implying. But Amber's face went white, which told me I was close to the truth. That's not... We didn't... She stammered. You didn't what? Sleep together while you were still married to me? Plan the video together? Laugh about how stupid your husband was while you betrayed him? The crowd was completely engaged now. This wasn't just a book signing anymore. It was live entertainment. You want to know what's manipulative, Benji? I continued, my voice still calm, but carrying clearly through the silent store. Manipulative is convincing a married woman to publicly humiliate her husband for content. Manipulative is hiding behind her when the consequences come. Manipulative is calling someone garbage when you're too much of a coward to take responsibility for your own actions. Screw you, man. You think you're so smart with your fancy words and your victim act, but everyone knows you're just a bitter loser who got lucky. And that's when something inside me snapped. Not into rage, I was too smart for that, and there were too many cameras. But into something colder and more dangerous. Into the part of me that had been underestimated my entire life and had finally learned to use that to my advantage. A bitter loser who got lucky, I repeated slowly. Interesting theory. Let me share another theory with everyone here. I turned to address the crowd directly. My theory is that some people create and some people destroy. Some people build things, art, relationships, careers, and some people can only tear down what others have built. I looked back at Benji. You're a destroyer, Benji. You destroy marriages, you destroy trust, you destroy other people's work and call it content. But here's what you can't destroy. Talent, success, the respect I've earned from people who actually matter. I gestured to the crowd. Look around. These people aren't here for drama or gossip or whatever viral moment you're hoping to create. They're here for poetry, for art, for something real in a world full of artificial garbage. I picked up one of my books from the table. This book has sold 300,000 copies. It's been translated into 12 languages. It's being taught in universities. 20 years from now, people will still be reading these poems. Can you say the same about your TikTok videos? The crowd murmured approval. Someone started clapping. You want to call me a loser? Fine. I'm a loser who makes more in a month than you make in a year. I'm a loser with a best-selling book, a movie deal, and the respect of my peers. What exactly does that make you? Benji was speechless, his face cycling through various shades of red. But Amber wasn't done. You think you're so superior, she said, her voice shaking with anger. You think you're this noble artist who rose above betrayal, but you're just a petty, vindictive man who can't let go of the past. Let go of the past? I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. Amber, you made a video 3 days ago calling me emotionally abusive. You've given 6 interviews in the past month trying to destroy my reputation. You're literally here right now, interrupting my book signing, calling me names. Who exactly is having trouble letting go? She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. You want to know the real difference between us? When you hurt me, I turned it into art. When I succeeded despite your betrayal, you turned it into a vendetta. One of us is moving forward, and one of us is stuck in a loop of resentment and blame. I sat back down and picked up my pen. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have readers to meet. People who appreciate poetry and understand the difference between creating something meaningful and just making noise. I turned to the college student who'd been waiting patiently through the entire confrontation. I'm sorry about that. You were saying my rain poem helped you through a difficult time? The student glanced nervously at Amber and Benji, who were still standing there, unsure what to do next. Yeah, I was dealing with depression, and the way you wrote about finding beauty in sadness, it made me feel less alone. That's exactly why I write, I said, signing her book. To remind people that their feelings matter, that their experiences are valid, that they're not alone in the world. I handed her the book and looked up at Amber and Benji one last time. Some people understand that. Others just see an opportunity to mock something they can't create themselves. Security appeared then. The store manager had finally decided to intervene. Amber and Benji were escorted out, but not before dozens of phones had captured every moment of their humiliation. The video would be online within hours. Team Logan would be trending by evening, but for now, I just wanted to get back to what mattered. connecting with readers, signing books, and proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply being better than the people who tried to destroy you. 6 months later, I was standing in the green room of The Tonight Show, adjusting my tie and trying to process how my life had changed. Spaces Between Poems had spent 16 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. The movie rights had sold to Netflix. I'd been offered a teaching position at Columbia. 3 more publishers were bidding on my next collection. But the real victory was simpler than all of that. I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy for the first time in years. "Mr. Pierce, you're on in 5 minutes." I nodded to the production assistant and checked my phone one last time. A text from Miles. "Watching tonight, you've come so far from that day in the classroom." Another from my editor. "Book 2 is going to be even bigger, trust me." And one from my lawyer. "Divorce finalized. Amber signed everything. You're free." Free. What a beautiful word. I walked onto the set to thunderous applause. The host, a comedian I'd watched for years, greeted me like an old friend. "Logan Pierce, everyone, the poet who turned Betrayal into bestsellers." More applause. I sat down, still slightly amazed that this was my life now. "So Logan, when your wife first posted that video mocking your poetry, did you ever imagine it would lead to all this?" "Never," I said honestly. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd been humiliated beyond recovery. It never occurred to me that the worst day of my marriage might become the best day of my career. "Tell us about that moment when you realized you could turn this around." It was actually my students who inspired me. I teach high school English, and these kids face cyberbullying, social media drama, public humiliation on a scale that would have destroyed me at their age. But they're resilient. They adapt. They find ways to turn negative attention into positive outcomes. I learned from them. And now, you're taking a year off teaching to focus on writing. Actually, I'm going back to the classroom next month. Writing is my passion, but teaching is my calling. Plus, I have some incredible stories to share with my students about resilience and turning setbacks into comebacks. The interview continued for another 10 minutes. We talked about the creative process, about finding authentic voice in an artificial world, about the difference between vulnerability and victimhood. But the best part came at the end. "Logan, do you have any message for people who might be going through their own betrayals, their own public humiliations?" I looked directly into the camera, thinking about all the messages I'd received from readers who'd found hope in my story. I'd tell them that the people who mock your dreams, who betray your trust, who try to make you smaller, they're not the ones who get to define your worth. You are. Your response to their cruelty is what matters, not the cruelty itself. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Someone very close to me once thought my poetry was worthless. She thought my feelings were cringe, my vulnerability was weakness, my dreams were jokes. She was wrong about all of it. And the beautiful irony is that her wrongness became the very thing that proved her wrong. The audience erupted in applause. Walking off that stage, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete vindication. Not the petty satisfaction of revenge, but the deeper fulfillment of proving that authentic creation will always triumph over destructive mockery. My phone was buzzing with notifications, but I ignored them. I had a flight to catch back to Portland, lesson plans to prepare, and a new collection of poems to finish. As I settled into my first-class seat, paid for with poetry money, which still amazed me, I opened my laptop and started writing. After the Storm, a poem about rebuilding, about discovering that sometimes the people who try to break you are actually the ones who set you free. 3 rows behind me, a passenger was watching my Tonight Show interview on their tablet. I could hear my own voice talking about resilience and authentic art. I smiled and kept writing, because that's what creators do. We turn pain into beauty, betrayal into art, mockery into meaning. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very persistent, we get to watch the people who tried to destroy us realize that they've actually made us stronger than we ever could have been on our own. The plane took off, carrying me home to my real life. Teaching, writing, and living proof that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better.